Hello and greetings, Africa. A quick update. We are in Sierra Leone, a country that used to be called Sierra Leone. Of course, the Portuguese occupied this place before the British. And, the Portuguese named it Sierra Leone because many of the mountains in Sierra Leone have the shape, they have the semblance, they resemble, the shape, the pattern, the face of a lioness. So the Portuguese named it Sierra Leone, which means Lioness Mountain. And this is Freetown, that's the Atlantic Ocean. And we're here for a couple of days. In case you don't know what our travels are about, we're traveling through Africa. We're actually in our 5th month. We've done almost 30 countries, over 40,000 kilometers of traveling through Africa, promoting a visa-free Africa, where we believe that all African nationals should be able to travel freely without the requirements of visas. So Sierra Leone is a small country, but of course it's a rich country. We've got minerals here. It's got a population of 9 million. The currency here is the Leon. Freetown is the capital, and Freetown got its name from the British, of course. When slavery was abolished, they decided that slaves who were not freed, slaves who were not doing well, in other words, poor slaves, should be deported back to Africa, and so they brought them here in Freetown, and hence the name Freetown. It's an interesting place. They're doing very well for themselves. They are rising through the ashes. They've had a brutal civil war, but I see improved infrastructure up and down the country, and I think they need to be encouraged. This week we're here in Sierra Leone, and of course in Liberia as well, and next week we are in the Ivory Coast, and then we would be in Ghana as well. I want to thank you all for your support and prayers. After nearly 30 countries, we're still healthy and hale, or hale and hearty, as the English say, and health is wealth. So in spite of the challenges we've encountered along the way, we are happy. Now, no African country should be asking another African should produce visas before they are allowed in. Do you ask your brother or your sister for money before they come to your house? And if you wouldn't ask your brother or your sister money before they come to your house, why would Africans ask other African nationals to produce visas? This is what we want to dismantle, and we believe that the prosperity of Africa lies in a visa-free Africa, where all Africans are able to travel freely without the requirements of visas, and we believe this would stimulate growth. It would lead to job creation. It would lead to revenue for government. It would lead to intra-Africa tourism, intra-Africa trade, and of course, cultural exchanges. So you keep watching. Have a wonderful Sunday, and we'll see you at the next destination. Bye from us. Hello, Africa, and welcome to Sierra Leone. Indeed, that is the Portuguese pronunciation, and it was the Portuguese who first occupied Sierra Leone from Europe. And when they did occupy the place, they named it Sierra Leone, which means Lioness Mountain. You see, the mountains in Sierra Leone, some of them have the semblance, they resemble, they look like the face of a lioness, and so the Portuguese named it Lioness Mountain. The British corrupted the Portuguese pronunciation, and they called it Sierra Leone. It's a country of 9 million people. The Atlantic coast is what you're seeing right now. Sierra Leone is in West Africa. The capital is Freetown. The currency here is Leon, and of course they got the name Freetown as a result of slave history. When slavery was abolished, the British deported poor free slaves to Sierra Leone, and the place used to call Granville Town, Freetown, after a man who was instrumental in convincing the British administration to bring the slaves, the free slaves back to Africa, to Freetown. But of course, because they were freed slaves, the place gradually assumed the name, Freetown, and that it has since been called Freetown long before independence. I'm talking about 1787, was when, the first batch of freed slaves from Britain were brought here in Sierra Leone. It's a country that has been through trauma. They've had, civil conflicts, but it's a country that is also rising from the ashes, that is getting up, recovering from, the difficult and the past, the tough past. And they're doing well for themselves. I've seen remarkable improvement in infrastructure. There's a lot of road construction happening in Sierra Leone. Obviously, it's a diamond-rich country, so you can't expect less. And indeed, they have done well for themselves. Why are we here? We are promoting a visa-free policy for all African nationals. Some Africans require visa to travel to Sierra Leone, and it upsets me so much. It's mindless. It's unforgivable that Africans would still demand of other Africans visas to come to their country. And of course, Sierra Leone is not the only country that requires or demands of other Africans to have, visas. We believe, and when I say we, I mean the Trans-Africa Tourism and Unity Campaign, the team that has been spearheading this Visa-Free Africa campaign believes that, it is in Africa's best interest to be borderless, to be visa-free, where all African nationals should be able to travel freely without a restriction of visas. I mean, this is something that would stimulate growth, that would lead to job creation in the hospitality industry especially. It would lead to enormous amount of levels of tourism. It will lead to cultural exchanges. It will lead to revenue for governments. And I don't see why we should be dragging our feet over making Africa borderless. In 1884 and 85, when the Europeans drew lines across the African continent, they had one thing in mind, to take over Africa and to control Africa and to rule Africa and to divide and rule us. And several decades down the line, we still haven't wrapped our heads around this simple fact and did everything possible to unite. And so we are trying to continue the legacy of Kwame Nkrumah. He's a man who led his life, laid down his life for this great continent, paid a price for it. And we want to make sure that Africa would be completely borderless and particularly visa-free, by 2030, which is 4 years from now. The African Union is also on the same path, except that, the AU is a bit out of touch. They want this to happen in 40 years' time. And we believe that the African youth does not have 40 years. 40 years is a lifetime. The youth are seeking for opportunities. We've got a huge youth bulge. The youthful population of Africa is enormous. And we've got to quicken our efforts to creating opportunities and jobs for the youth by making it easier for them to access opportunities up and down the African continent. And so we're doing this as our contribution, selflessly dedicated to the continent of Africa. Of course, this campaign is fully endorsed by the government of Ghana through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we're very grateful to the ministry led by the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa MP, and also grateful to the Office of the Chief of Staff for the enormous encouragement and support. I know the Chief of Staff would not like me saying this, but I remember when I told him we were going to do this. He said, "Ras no crow, Moses but that's the reality. I mean, we've got to fix our we've got to get our act together as Africans. There's so much resources. There's so much, Africa has, whether it's the sunshine, whether it's the mineral resources. We've got everything. We've got a huge population, a population that is creative as well. So what is stopping us, from uniting and using the resources for the benefit of our people? But of course, it also has to take political will. And even though governments such as the government of Ghana, for instance, the government of Ghana has indicated that all Africans should be able to come to Ghana, either, visa-free or with visa on arrival, by the end of this year, 2026. But we want it to be completely visa-free. How do you charge your brother money for coming to your country? How do you ask another African to pay visa fees and acquire visas to come to another African country? It doesn't make sense. And you see, they will tell you, oh, but the visa fees are, generating revenue. I mean, the revenue we get from visa fees is minute compared to the benefits we could rake from a visa-free policy where more and more Africans would be able to come in and trade and access opportunities and tour and learn about our culture, etc. So this is something that has to be done. But another elephant in the room is the fact that Africa is expensive. Africa is extremely expensive, whether it is hotels or airfares, etc. It is extremely expensive. And so I'm hoping that, we could also make it easier for Africans to be able to travel. Can you imagine if tickets were, say, $100 to travel from Sierra Leone to Cape Town, or to travel from Tanzania to, say, Morocco, or to travel from Accra to Egypt? A lot of Africans will be able to move, and the more Africans that are moving, the better for us. This is not rocket science, my friends. And so we've traveled 5 months, almost 30 countries, more than 40,000 kilometers. And this has to happen. I mean, it's extremely frustrating, given the benefits we could derive from visa-free travel and the feet dragging by the leadership of Africa. When we were doing this trip, take Botswana for instance. It took us 3 months to get a visa to Botswana. Can you believe that? 3 months, my friends. Even though the Botswanan government were very nice when we finally made it to Botswana, and I must thank the Chief of Staff of Botswana and the government, for receiving us warmly. But to the government of Botswana, it's wrong. It's wrong for an African to take 3 months to get an African visa. To the government of Mauritania, which denied us visas twice in 3 months, it is wrong. It is wrong to take peanuts from the European Union, who are telling you don't let Africans to come in, and they are giving you peanuts and you think they're doing you a favor. They don't love you. What you get by way of aid from the European Union to keep Africans from not accessing Mauritania is peanuts. And they say, oh, when they don't want the migrant crisis in Europe, and so countries along the road to Europe from Africa would have to do everything to stop Africans from coming. Africans ordinarily don't want to come. A lot of the time, it is you people who have created problems here in Africa. You meddle in our politics, you get the wrong guys in office, so you could steal from us. That is the reality. Which group of people have destabilized the African continent more than anybody? It is the West. You take and take and take and take, and the disrespect. And you come here giving us lectures on how to run our lives, when in your own countries, people are struggling, homelessness, knife crime, theft, gun violence, etc. No country is perfect, and we want to fix our Africa. No Africa African who, knows what opportunities there are in Africa would want to leave Africa and go and live elsewhere. A lot of the time, it is you people who have destabilized, who have facilitated the destabilization of Africa, who created the problems in Libya. It is the West. It is the West. Once upon a time, Libya was a thriving country, and I know very prominent people from Ghana who lived in Libya. The current Speaker of Parliament used to live in Libya. The former Minister of Lands and Natural Resources taught English, lived in Libya and taught English. So you can imagine if Africans are moving to African countries, accessing opportunities, trading amongst ourselves. Who would want to come to Europe? Who would want to go to North America? And so as Africans, we've got to realize this and know that enough of the allowing ourselves to be taken advantage of. It is in our interest to open the borders. Look, if we open the borders today, if we make Africa visa-free, the European economy would collapse because Africa would thrive. The European economy would collapse. And many of them don't want Africa to thrive. And that is why they would give countries such as Mauritania, peanuts to keep other Africans from coming. But we've got to rise above this. We have to, my friends. And I'm really appealing to every progressive African to support the cause. Put pressure on your members of parliament. Put pressure on your senators. Put pressure on your government. Africa has got to be visa-free by 2030 for all African nationals. For all African nationals, my friends. Your sisters are coming to your country, your brothers are coming to your country, and you ask them to go and queue, and Europeans are asking us to go and queue to get visas, Americans are asking us to go and queue to get visas, and the intrusion, the silly questions into personal lives, it's unbelievable. And many of their citizens don't have a quarter of the life we have here in Africa. Forget the underdevelopment. But the peace of mind, the strong family ties we have, they don't have it. The sunshine, they don't have it. And so we've got to fix Africa. And fixing Africa doesn't only stop at a borderless or a visa-free Africa. Look at the trash. And I'm not picking up on Sierra Leone. Look at the plastics. This is a pervasive problem in sub-Saharan Africa. I use this opportunity to commend countries such as Namibia, for example. Small country, clean country. Rwanda, they've actually dealt with the issue of plastic pollution. And we should look to Rwanda, a country that has risen from the ashes. And if Rwanda, with all the problems it had, can rise from the ashes, plant more trees, keep Rwanda green, rid Rwanda of filth, whether in the cities or rural areas, I don't know what stops us from getting there. Countries that have not experienced a quarter of what Rwandans have experienced. If Moroccans are doing it, I don't see why any country with all the resources should not be able to do it. And so there's a lot of things, there's a lot of work that we have to do. All of us would have to be the change we want to see in Africa. It's not only a government headache. Citizens must be involved. It's not acceptable to litter, to keep our communities, look at the beaches. To keep the beaches untidy. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to put up with corruption. I get very passionate, I get very worked up, when I'm talking about these things, and I hope you can understand. Normally on Sundays, I take it very easy. I'm a Sunday born, and Sunday tend to be my Sabbath day, if you like. But you must understand where I'm coming from, my dear friends. That we can't watch our sons and daughters perish in the Mediterranean all in the name of going to Europe to seek for non-existent greener pastures. Recently, we're in Gambia, and guess what? 190, just 3 weeks ago, 190 Gambian youth perished in the water. Their boat capsized and they died. Many from one village, just in the Gambia. If we are fixing our countries, if we are getting our act together, who would want to leave their loved ones and go and live in another place where, they are treated as second-class citizens? And so the leaders, the politicians would have to lead and lead right. They must lead right. I'm not saying the current, Gambian government is not doing anything or it is their fault. But it's a problem that runs across Africa, where youth are desperate to leave. And the desperation comes from lack of opportunities. And these lack of opportunities are happening because we have failed to think. That is a reality, my friends. Anyway, I just want to wish you a happy Sunday. We've traveled almost 30 countries. We're here in Sierra Leone. This week we would go to Liberia, then we head to Ivory Coast, then of course we head to Ghana. I want to thank you for all the support and prayers. It's been amazing, and we couldn't have done this without your support and prayers. God bless you. God bless Africa. Thank you.